Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. You know, as you know, this is a big election year, and you'll be voting on candidates for national, state, and county level positions. And today we're going to be talking about an office that I'm guessing many of you know very little about, and that's the Hillsborough County Register of Probate. Now, there are two candidates for the position. Nominee Joe Keller Levasseur, who's the Republican nominee, he's from Manchester, and the Democratic nominee, Graham V. Smith of Amherst. Late yesterday afternoon, and I do feel compelled to tell you this, we were scheduled to do a show with Joe Keller Levasseur. Unfortunately, it had to be canceled at the very last minute because he had a family member go off to the emergency room whom he understandably had to accompany. And unfortunately, we can't reschedule the show simply because we've run out of time for shows to be taped and actually make it onto the air before the election. So he understands that and expressed his great regrets. So, my guest today is the Democratic nominee for the seat, Graham V. Smith. And Graham earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Management and Liberal Arts with honors from Northeastern University, where he also completed multiple management seminars. And he has extensive foreign language study in both French and Japanese. Now, he's resided in England, Switzerland, Belgium, and 4 different states, and settled down in Amherst some 29 years ago. Graham served 6 years in the Rhode Island Air National Guard and had a very successful career in business management in both large and small computer companies, and at one point managed the budgets of up to $400 million at what was then America's second largest computer company. He also spent 11 years managing all overseas business for a successful startup company, and for them, he created subsidiaries in 4 different countries. He's taught graduate level courses at Boston University. And interestingly, he's an instrument-rated pilot. And one of his great contributions is that he's completed more than 50 medical charity flights. And those of you who know about those things, that's a crucial service to people in dire need. Now retired from the business world, Graham's well known in the area for many civic involvements, and he, not the least of which is, he has been chairman of the Amherst Democratic Committee since 2005 and chairman of the Hillsborough County Town Democratic Committee since 2011. He's been married for 48 years, and he and his wife have 2 grown sons. Graham, I'm delighted you're here. Thank you for coming. Not only, bearing up with the morning traffic on 101 from Amherst, but I know at this time of year, as a Democratic chair, you've got your hands full with all these Democratic candidates that you're working with.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, I'm delighted to have you. And I hope you won't mind, as chairman of the Democratic Committee, that I'll open up kind of making a quick little announcement about one of your members from Amherst. As you know, I've been doing a series of shows with both the Democratic and Republican candidates for important offices this year. And consequently, I had asked a fellow Amherst resident, Len Gerzon, to come on the show because, as we all know, he's the Republican nominee for this new flotarial district.
The Democratic.
I'm sorry, thank you for the correction. The Democratic nominee for this new flotarial district in the House that represents both Bedford and Amherst. And he's opposing the Republican nominee, Laurie Sanborn. Now, Lee was scheduled to tape a show earlier this week on the holiday due to his, PSNH work schedule. Unfortunately, the poor guy got diagnosed with pneumonia. So he wasn't able to come here. So with that, I do want to say that Len did have an opportunity to tape a Candidates Corner show here at BCTV that the Democratic local committee ran. So what I would like to suggest to folks is that they watch for that on the BCTV schedule so that they'll be able to meet Len and hear about his platform and qualifications. So sorry to take up your time. That as a fellow Democrat, I know you want people to know about him.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. Now, Graham, start out telling us what the Register of Probate actually is, because I think a lot of people are like, another register, what is it?
Well, the question is really, what did the Register of Probate do in the past?
Well, yeah, I wanted to kind of lead
Right.
up to that because it's a fascinating story.
The Register of Probate used to be the clerk of the probate court, but in 2011, the legislature reorganized the court system in New Hampshire, combining the probate court, the family court, and the district courts into what is now called the circuit court. The judiciary at that point fired all of the clerks of courts because they didn't need 3 clerks for one court, and allowed the clerks to reapply for a job as clerk of a court. They couldn't actually fire the Register of Probate because Register of Probate is a position that is mentioned in the New Hampshire Constitution. So what they did instead was to take away virtually all the duties of the Register of Probate and reduce the salary to $100 a year. So that's what the Register of Probate used to do. In the future, it's not clear that there's anything for the Register of Probate to do.
It is kind of wild. Now, do you want to go back a little bit over the whole history of why it was set up and such? Because, I mean, my understanding is that this position has been on the New Hampshire ballot ever since the Civil War.
1871 to be precise, yeah. Just after, right. Along with Register of Deeds, a number of other county positions. And for quite a while, people have been suggesting that these county positions ought to be appointed. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have one of the court clerks, when we had multiple courts, elected, whereas the others are all appointed by the judiciary. So it's not clear why it was originally set up that way to have an elected Register of Probate, but because it's in the Constitution, they couldn't simply wave it away.
Now, again, my understanding, and please correct me because I'm certainly not by no means an expert on state constitutional law, but to eliminate the position would require either amending the whole state constitution, which of course is a big deal, or eliminating it through putting it on the ballot and getting a 2/3 statewide vote to do that. How did legislators manage to pull off such a dramatic change to the whole thing without doing either of those two things? Why didn't they do either of those two things? And at this point in time, can their decision be reversed?
Well, first of all, the legislature has always had the ability to prescribe what the duties and compensation of the Register of Probate and all other state officers should be. So they merely repealed many of the clauses that described specific duties of the Register of Probate. They left 3 clauses in, 2 of which prohibit the Register of Probate from doing certain things, and one of which is, according to registers that I've spoken to, not very meaningful because it's never happened.
Aren't there something like 44 different clauses too that they tinkered with related to the duties?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number of clauses that were there, but if you go online, all New Hampshire legislation is online, all of the RSAs, and you can see what the modified RSA looks like. Most of the paragraphs are deleted.
So if there were like a lobby effort by anybody in the state, that could, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the legislature could go back to it and say, okay, we're going to put it all back in effect, right? If
Well,
they change these things again?
That would be very difficult because at the moment there is no separate probate court. So what would be required, I guess, I'm not an expert on the laws, but it seems to me that they would have to reconstitute the probate court, break it out of the new circuit court, and I'm not sure why they would want to do that. I don't know what the motivation would be to reconstitute the Register of Probate as the clerk of the probate court.
So probate court, what covers things like wills and
Wills,
those things related more to people?
adoptions, name changes, yeah.
So now that's all getting picked up by one of the other courts.
By the circuit court, yes.
Now, didn't the circuit court object? Didn't they say, hey, you're giving us more of a workload and not changing our lives at all?
Well, the circuit court didn't exist before this reorganization that
Oh, that
took
all
place.
was a new creation of it.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, they combined the family court, the district courts, and the probate court into a new structure called the circuit court.
Wow. So now would that even include things like child custody, divorce, stuff like that?
Yes.
Wow. Somehow, I don't know, something seems out of whack there.
Well, it was an attempt by the legislature to save cost and increase efficiency. I imagine that's the motivation behind the
So that was their
legislation.
major premise?
Yeah.
Wow. And there was no uproar? I mean, nobody went in and testified against or anything?
Well, I didn't follow the legislation when it was going through the process, so I'm not sure if there were people who objected to it. I think it was primarily viewed as a way to save costs and to avoid duplications.
Wow. So every county basically, I assume, lost the folks who had held that position.
Right. Well, the Hillsborough County Register of Probate resigned the day after they reduced the salary to $100.
Hadn't he been there a long time?
He had been for a very long time. He was getting a salary of $80,000 a year, as I recall, and
Gee, unreasonable to think when they switched it to $100 he'd quit, huh? I mean, seriously.
yeah. Well, other registers of probate, for example, in Cheshire County, who had been working pretty hard at it with a much smaller staff than the Hillsborough County Register had, sued and
Oh,
won.
they did?
Oh, yes, they won their lawsuit on the grounds that it was, in effect, a wrongful dismissal.
So what happened? What'd they get?
I'm not sure what the award was. I believe they had their salaries reinstated.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How come he didn't join in on that?
Well, the former Register of Hillsborough had resigned, and so I think that might have weakened his case with regard to being wrongfully dismissed.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah. Oh, I take it he wasn't aware that they were going to band together and do that?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I think he'd had some problems with illness and was ready to retire anyway.
Yeah. Somehow it just seems crazy. And I mean, I'm kind of surprised that the legal profession didn't kind of jump in there and go, whoa, you're creating all kinds of new problems for us.
I don't know. I mean, as far as the reorganization of the courts, in the northern counties, it seems to have been a good idea because in the less densely populated parts of the state, there wasn't necessarily enough work for full-time probate court and family court. And the consolidation allows a particular judge, once he or she has been trained in the specifics of probate or family matters or whatever, to be able to hear any case. And so that suggests that there's more efficiency in the system. Here in the southern tier of the state, where population is a lot denser, it's perhaps not as good a thing because you have fewer people trying to do the same amount of work, particularly the administrative people, the clerk courts that have been removed.
Now, the state, you had mentioned there was a staff in Hillsborough County, which makes sense because it's so big,
Yes.
especially with the two major cities in it. What happened to them? Did they all lose their jobs, or did they try to get them into another aspect of court service? Or
I don't know how far down it went, but I do know that they dismissed all of the clerks of courts that were clerks of either probate family or district courts, and gave them the opportunity to reapply for what turns out to be a smaller number of jobs. I don't know how far down the chain that went, but I do know that the clerks were dismissed.
You know, in the general scheme of things, I mean, even if you totaled all of the counties, it just doesn't seem to me like we'd be talking a huge amount of money that the legislature would have kind of played around with so much.
Well, it's not clear that all of the things that they did in the last legislative session actually saved money. In some cases, things that the legislature did actually have the effect of downshifting costs to towns and the counties. So I can't defend what they did. I wasn't there.
Yeah. You know, when you told me on the phone when we gabbed that day, you mentioned that now it's changed, that, for instance, if you're elected, your magnificent salary is going to be that huge sum of $100. But isn't there even a caveat to that? I mean, you can't put that 100 in your pocket, can you?
Well, first of all, the $100 is a before-tax amount. But the after-tax amount, yes, I imagine you could, although that's not my intention. My campaign pledge is that if I am elected as Register of Probate in Hillsborough County, I will donate the $100 to your favorite charity, you being anybody who votes for me and sends me an email naming their favorite charity.
That's pretty intriguing. You know, now given all of that, given that, you know, you're going to the effort of running, and I mean, no matter what anybody runs for, there's a time commitment. I mean, just right here alone, you're giving up your morning to me to do this show. So, I mean, there's always a time commitment. There's aggravation certainly involved with running for anything. There's expense involved. I mean, just, you know, this alone right here, the card that you're giving to people. So, you know, given all that, and that even if you kept that money, it wouldn't even be $100, what made you decide to run?
Well, as you mentioned at the outset, I'm the chair of the Hillsborough County Towns Democratic Committee, and both the Republican and Democratic chairs can't stand to see an open slot on the ballot. Part of the responsibility of a party chair is to recruit people to run for office, and of course the Register of Probate job being a non-job, it was a little difficult to recruit people. And so what I did was I put my own name on the ballot so there wouldn't be a blank spot there, but also because I thought it would give me a sort of forum like we're having today to discuss some of the things that I disagree with that the legislature has done. Some of the more egregious things, some of them are silly, some of them are going to downshift costs to the towns and the counties, and some of the things that they've done claiming to save money are actually going to cost more money later because, for example, the Child's Health Intervention Program, early intervention with troubled children with behavioral problems, teenagers, can often save money down the line by avoiding court costs and more serious consequences.
So it's all intriguing. As I said, when I first gave you a call on the phone, I wasn't aware of all of that background. And the more that you talked, the more I thought, now this is a story, no matter how you cut it, that people should hear. And the people, people really need, I think, to make a statement by voting for the position, not just kind of run by it on the ballot and leave it blank. Now, has there actually been a horse race between you and Joe Keller Levasseur, or?
Well, I haven't heard from Mr. Levasseur. And he hasn't filled out the Nashua Telegraph. They have an item for campaigns on the Nashua Telegraph.
Oh, like the little profiles?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen his profile there, so I don't know if he's actually campaigning. He and I were both interviewed by the Nashua Telegraph, and I guess he said that he plans to call for a legislative investigation into why they did away with this important job. And I guess he's quoted in the Telegraph as saying his first question will be, where's my office? I don't think I'll need an office.
You mean his physical office?
I assume so.
Well, I mean, if you were given a physical office, what is going to happen there?
Well, I doubt that there would be a physical office going forward, and I can't imagine what would happen there. As I said before, all of the duties have been taken away. There's no requirement that the Register of Probate do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why they would not go to the trouble of a constitutional convention. I mean, I don't know exactly what goes into setting one up, but I imagine there's expense and lots of time and lots of people needing to be involved. Why wouldn't they put it on the ballot?
Well, first of all, it requires I believe it's a 60% majority in both houses of the legislature in order for a constitutional amendment to be placed on the ballot. And then it requires, I believe, a 2/3 majority of the voters at the next election in order for the constitutional amendment to amend the Constitution. There are 3 constitutional amendments on the Constitution
exactly.
On the ballot in November. I disagree with them both, but...
Oh, you're entitled to say that. I mean, you're going to use this as a forum. You know, you said that it's an opportunity for you to be able to get out and give your philosophy, and that's your primary reason for running. So you're certainly allowed to say that. You know, having said that, you have an opportunity probably that nobody else that I got to interview through this whole series has. That basically, I mean, we can consider you like kind of a ticking time bomb sitting over there, able to say whatever the heck you want right now. Is there something you would like to say?
Well, yeah, I guess I would say that the first constitutional amendment that's proposed is to enshrine in the New Hampshire state constitution that there shall never be an income tax. And whether you're in favor or opposed to levying an income tax on New Hampshire residents, it doesn't really make sense to tie the hands of all future legislatures. You can't really predict what situations they'll face in 5, 10, 20 years from now, and to restrict them just doesn't make any sense. We have, as you know, an income tax in New Hampshire. People who put money away for their retirement, such as myself, are paying a 5% income tax on their interest and dividends income. The current system of taxation in New Hampshire relies more heavily on the property tax than does that of any other state. And it is fairly regressive, particularly for older people who are less fortunate than I have been, who are living mainly on Social Security, who have these enormous property tax bills every year. But all that aside, the main reason that I'm opposed to the constitutional amendment is I don't think it makes sense to tie the hands of future legislators by enshrining that in the Constitution. The other one is, seems to me, is a blatant attempt to disrupt the separation of powers that is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution and also in the New Hampshire Constitution. It basically allows the legislature to establish rules for the court system, and if the rules that they establish are in conflict with the rules that the judiciary itself has established, the legislative rules will override. And that, to me, seems to be a serious attack on the separation of powers.
Well, this has been thought-provoking, this whole interview. We're kind of getting down into the final stretch, so I'm going to throw one quick more question at you. I mentioned earlier that you've been chairman of the Amherst Democratic Committee, which obviously is the town committee, and chairman of the whole county towns Democratic Committee. What are your biggest challenges on both of those levels?
Well, I guess the same challenges that my opposite numbers in the Republican Party have, and that is recruiting good candidates for office, raising money for them, and helping them get elected. It's probably more of a challenge for me because, as you know, in the Hillsborough County towns, at least in the eastern part of the county, Republicans outnumber Democrats by a significant margin. But I've gone back to the year 2000 and looked at the number of registered Democrats, independents, and Republicans. And in Amherst, for example, over the 8-year period, Democratic registrations have increased by almost 70% over the 8-year period, and Republican registrations are absolutely flat. So change is happening, perhaps more slowly here in Bedford than in other parts of the state, but Democratic registrations are on the upswing.
Yeah, interesting. Just a fast question: has it been easier or harder this year to recruit candidates?
Oh, much easier,
yes,
because of the many things that have been done by the Bill O'Brien, in particular, the way that he has ignored time-honored rules of the House, has disrespected members even of his own party. There are a lot of people that are really upset with what's been going on, and people. One of the candidates for the Amherst seat called me up and said, "Hey, I can't just sit by anymore and complain. I've got to do something about it, so I'm going to run." And that it's been easier this year for sure.
I wondered about that. Well, we are right into the end time zone now, so look at that camera and tell people why they should vote for you, because that's what it's all about. You want those votes.
Well, if you vote for me, please, and if I'm elected, please send me an email to the email address, which I guess is on the screen, smithforprobate@comcast.net, and the charity that gets the most votes by email will get the $100.
That's a good incentive. You probably just got a whole bunch of new votes right there, you know. All the folks who are active with different nonprofits will go, woohoo, another chance, you know.
I hope so. I have already gotten a number of emails.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, listen, I do appreciate you coming over. And again, particularly for a job like this where, you know, if you win, there's not really much reward attached. But you will get a forum at least. And I do appreciate you coming over because, you know, we're here bright and early in the morning, and just sitting in that 101 traffic from Amherst can be trying. So we've enjoyed having you.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it as well.
Well, it was a lot of fun talking to you on the phone, so I knew that other people would find the story kind of fascinating as well. And now, at least, when they look at that ballot and see that option, they'll know what it's all about.
Yep.
All right. Well, best of luck. Thank you so much
you.
for being here. Well, another Tell It Like It Is as we wind closer and closer to those final days before the big vote. And I think you probably learned something today. I know I did just in that one phone call I had with him. So make sure you're out there voting, and make sure you see that particular thing on the ballot and cast your vote one way or another. Keep on telling it like it is. That's what we'll do here. And until next time, bye-bye.